Hello, people of the internet, and
Good
welcome
morning, everyone.
to another edition of the Artcraft Ace Q&A. What's the date? When's this? What are we doing, Blair? Do you have the card?
September 1st.
Of 2020.
Of 20...
You have no card?
I do have a card.
The Ace Q&A. So, for those of you joining us for the first time, the Ace Q&A is a thing we do once a month where we take basically either stuff that's going on internally that we think you might find interesting or stuff that you guys have asked us about on the forums or Twitter or wherever, and we answer a bunch of questions. We basically tell you what's going on, and that's pretty much it. So we've got some pretty cool stuff coming this particular month. This is a different one than normal because we just went into beta last month, which is really, really cool. It also means that we're riding a little bit high on our own adrenaline and momentum. So I'll give you guys a quick heads up that last month was the single best month we have ever had for new registrations, new backers, total backer dollars, new web views, players coming to the game, uniques daily, uniques monthly, across the board. It was just the most excitement and activity we have seen since we did the Kickstarter. So that's incredibly awesome. I'm proud of the team for everything they've done to get us here, but I'm also super, super happy that you guys have been willing to stick with us and come back and check us out and being patient for us as we try this grand experiment that is, let's create an MMO unlike anything that's ever come before. So it's a great thing that experiments start to pay off a little bit. So thank you guys for that.
And I think it's great to see all the new people coming in, and I want to shout out to all of the people who have stuck with us this entire time.
Yeah,
because a lot of them are being great mentors to the new people coming in, and I see lots of guides going up because it's an MMO, so it's deep, right? There's layer upon layer upon.
And it's not until just now that we even have any kind of a tutorial in, right? Like this version has the first 2 chapters of the new player experience. So before this, there was literally no way to know the game. Now there's some, but there's still a whole lot of complexity there that is not exposed. So so thank you definitely to the kind of loyal following who has done such a good job of reaching out and getting other people engaged. So I guess real quick, just to back up, we should introduce ourselves. So I'm Todd Coleman, Creative Director. This is Thomas Blair, Lead Designer of Crowfall. We've been doing this so long now that we forget. And Debbie Sue is with us too. I don't know if she's on the screen or not, but she is in the background hovering, and she's going to give me bad looks when I say things I'm not supposed to. All right, so what are we going over this time, Mr. Blair, now that we've gotten past the beta update and the thank yous?
Looks like we've got some updates to the live and test servers on the schedule to talk about.
Okay.
Test, we've just started bringing it up for the 6-100 milestone is what are we calling that?
Yeah, it's the Guild Alliance's milestone is really what it is. I mean, it also has mounts, which is funny because normally an update, that would be like a major update in and of itself. It's only not as impactful because it's in the shadow of Guild Alliances, which is really, really big. There's some quality of life stuff in here too, right?
Yeah, there's some quality of life stuff, but more importantly, we keep pushing on optimization, and there are a couple.
Absolutely.
Right, we just got to keep pushing that optimization line of code, and every update we're gonna have something new. So for us, it's been 6 weeks since we actually started. So we've forgotten some of the early optimization stuff that will now make it to you on test. It'll just make the gameplay experience better in large conflicts that we've been seeing, which is
the other
also
thing I think is. Sure, and the other thing that's worth pointing out on this one is how quickly this update, right? This is a pretty significant update. Guild Alliances is a big deal. Mounts is a big deal. Performance is a big deal. Yep. We upped the server cap to 175 people per zone now, so we're seeing fights where they're topping out at 175. So these are pretty significant updates. And beta just started last month. So our cadence of updates has also increased and gotten better, which I'm really proud of. I think that's really cool. We are very clearly now winnowing down on that list of things that we need for launch, which is really cool. Not to say that we won't add stuff forever. It's an MMO. We will add stuff forever. But the list of things that we originally set out to do is very, very quickly dwindling, and that's really cool.
The next thing we were supposed to talk about is the collector's edition preview.
Oh, let's do that. That's really cool. Okay, so this is one of those things that we laid the groundwork for like way, way back in Kickstarter. We said, okay, we're going to do a collector's edition. It's actually starting to make its way through production now, and we're starting to see pieces. Can y'all see Debbie Sue? I don't know if she's up on the screen or not, but Maybe yes, maybe no. Well, this is the prototype box for the collector's edition, and the collector's edition has a whole bunch of really cool stuff inside of it. The one that I think is actually turned out, those are two pieces that I think turned out incredibly cool. One is the miniatures, right? We have a lineup of, D&D style, Warhammer style miniatures for all of our different races and classes. And in fact, I think we have a few of those that we can bring up and show as well. But the quality level on those turned out really, really cool, like better than I expected. We effectively were able to take our actual 3D high-res versions of our 3D models from the game and 3D print them, pose them and 3D print them. And I think those are going to come out really, really nice. They're going to be some great looking little miniatures. The other is the art book, which I'm sure that everyone out there desperately needs to have on their coffee table. A book going over and showing off all the beautiful Crowfall art that we've created over the course of the last 5 years. But this thing covers everything from early concepting that we use for marketing purposes to the Pantheon of the Gods, to the races, the classes, equipment, animations. Like, it goes pretty exhaustively through everything. It's a really cool book.
Yeah,
it turned out really, really nice.
Our art has always been fantastic, and it's nice to see it all in one place. The miniatures look great, and you can get it only if you've been a real good boy this year.
God. Oh, Blair and his
Santa
Claus. Just the worst. So, okay, and the comic, which is really cool. You guys saw a preview of the comic, actually, when we put it out a couple of years ago, actually. But the comic is up and is ready now. Almost all the pieces are there. In fact, Debbie Sue, what's left that hasn't been done of all the stuff?
So the couple of things that are coming I'm excited about are the official soundtrack for Crowfall, which I think is very cool, and also our behind the scenes that shows the making of Crowfall, which may be more than we really want to share, but we'll see how the editing comes out on that. And then we have, of course, 3 months of VIP that are part of the digital rewards that come with this pack, 2 friend codes, and we also have a very cool looking USB flash drive, which you'll use to download your digital version of the game. And it looks a lot like our gorgeous box.
Yeah, I like the black on black. I think that turned out really cool. It's very, very distinctive, really cool look. So, anyway.
I think it's also cool because, again, it feels just so much more real, right? We deal with bugs and all of these other problems on a day-to-day, and you just...
For sure.
When you see the actual, the physical goods, you're like, oh, wow, yeah, there's other things going on other than this power is overpowered or this thing isn't drawing right. I mean, you're like, wow, this is a real thing.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Kind of feels like it's coming together.
Cool. All right. So what was next on anything else on the collectors? Oh, well, what else? So Debbie Sue, real quick, just because, so there were other things that came in there as well, right? Like there's some friend codes and stuff like that. Did we cover all of those?
We did. So 3 months of VIP subscription, 2 friend codes.
And what's a friend code?
A friend code is the opportunity to get your friend into the game at no charge, and it's for a full week playing with you.
Okay, cool. So it's basically
so it's like
an invite, but it's a full access invite.
That's right.
So,
After the game has already shipped.
Yeah.
So
cool.
There won't be a beta or any other way to do that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And anything else, or does that cover it? Am I forgetting anything?
I think that covers it.
That covers it.
All right, that's really cool. So next up, Blair, what's on our agenda?
We're going to look at a video clip of the crypt. So we've got some new zones coming.
This is cool. Yeah, this is cool. This is just eye candy. So, I mean, we thought this was an area that was worth going back to because it's the first area that you see when you come into the game, which is it's the crypt. So, one of the things I'm working on in the background that you guys won't see till the end is the entire kind of initial flow into the game. And we've got a lot of this comments back in beta, which is, hey, I only kind of know what I'm doing in this world. Like, I kind of have an idea of the story, but not completely. And there's a good reason for that. It's because the intro sequence is not in yet. Like, the major pieces that we have that tell the story will be coming between now and launch. So, but you'll be coming into the game. You'll be treated with some story. You'll be taken through character creation. We need to add more details to character creation because right now it's like, hey, here's a class. I can't tell what it does for me. these are little things that we got to get fixed, and then it'll segue into that first area, which will be the tomb. So that's really cool. It's also kind of neat looking at the difference between the concept and the actual how it turned out, to see how close it is. It really, I think, captures the mood and the feeling pretty effectively, which is really cool. So there you go, a little bit of eye candy.
Yeah, and it's seeing the crypt. I think, what's funny is the first time I saw it was on a whiteboard. You had written down the word "starting crypt," and it was like well over a year ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And so again, when you see something finally transition from the whiteboard to game, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's pretty cool.
So for this next version that's coming out, while we don't have a full chapter, we did use this crypt as another library. So we put a series of books in there that you come in, and instead of the Ganetian lamplighter there's a different lamplighter who basically says, hey, I know that, basically he says, I know there's no chapter 3 yet. Go read these books behind me, and at least you'll get some idea of how outposts and forts and keeps and all that stuff works. So while it's not ideal, it is at least one step better. So every build you see coming out now, we're going to try and push it one step better to explaining what the hell this game is and how it works. The cool thing about innovating and making something very, very different is that you end up with something very, very unique. The hard part about it, the challenging part about it, is it breaks all the assumptions of people coming into the game because they expect something to work one way and it doesn't. So that's all instruction and teaching, and it's a challenge for us. And unfortunately, it's also one of the things that you get to last in the project, just like optimization. So
next up, we've got more eye candy, which happens to be the other big tentpole of this milestone, which is we actually put mounts underneath the player.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. So for a long time we had the holy grail version of mounts, right, where I just kind of clap the coconuts together. I got the speed buff, but I didn't have any visuals. And this version now, for the first time, we have our first visuals coming online. We started with just the horses, so it's quarter horse, war horse, nightmare. The other ones will be coming as well, which, if you've looked in our game, you'll see a bunch of really cool creatures, things like hunger spiders and aurochs and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, all of those will likely make it their way to the mount system as well, just because mounts are cool.
Yeah, and Emily's going through the photos right now.
Cool.
But yeah, it definitely, for me, it was interesting because I was part of the implementation process of the mounts, was when we actually got the mount underneath the player and your camera lifted up and just running around. It was the exact same movement speed as the coconut form, but it just felt different.
Yeah, it does. The world felt too big before, and that's because we engineered it with the expectation that mounts would come online, and now it feels about right,
Yeah. And there is one thing everyone should know is the mounts, you'll be able to import them once 6100 moves to live. You'll be able to import them into the campaign. Right now, we kind of have an in-between because we don't have the skin system online.
Right.
Eventually, you are going to get a mount object, and you'll unlock all the skins that your account is entitled to, and you'll be able to equip whichever skin you want to show in-game, but we don't have that system quite yet.
So right now, it's really only half the mount system, right? It's the physical object that I can use to summon a mount.
Correct.
And the downside of only having the physical item is it means that it's subject to import and export rules, and it's subject to decay. So don't worry too much about that, because occasionally we do refreshes of all of your purchases. And so if you lose it for whatever reason, you'll get it back. We'll just wait till the next reset. Eventually, when the skin system comes online, it won't be possible to lose it, right? You'll just have the nightmare skin, and it doesn't matter what little hobby horse you find in the game or pony or whatever, you can change it to look like a nightmare, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah. So you're going to have an in-between now, but at least you'll have the art assets under you. We can start knocking out all the animation bugs and let the art side of the house actually see what they're making in game, so they can make adjustments, make more idols, maybe change the emissives on those guys. There's a lot of tuning that the art department can't do until they actually see the mount in game underneath the players, right? We had to come up with a scaling system so that the bigger characters like the Minotaur didn't look ridiculous on the quarter horse.
I got that response. When I first got a screenshot of it, I was excited enough. I posted to Twitter, and I got a couple of responses of that looks like a pony. And I was like, well, true. With the Minotaur, it does look like a pony. With the Ganetian, it looks like a Clydesdale. So there was a bit of a problem there. So we definitely, and I don't even know if that's in yet or not. They may still be uniform scale.
No, we got the scaling.
Okay, good. Okay,
yeah.
Good.
So again, it's about completing it and polishing it and getting it in front of you guys so you can also find all the crazy bugs that we didn't see when we were building it. But again, there's more to this. Ultimately, it will be a skin that you just override the current mount if you want to, based on an entitlement that's on your account. And
they do have jumping. That's one thing that I think surprised people, because the previous coconut version, we had turned off the jump just because it looked so ridiculous and it didn't quite work right with the player animations.
Right.
Now that we got the actual mounts in, we were able to turn jumping back on, which is cool. So.
And it was funny. The first time I had the mount under me, the very first thing I tried to do was just start mashing the space bar. And I was like, this doesn't work yet. So.
But it does now.
It does now. So you guys will never have to experience that pain again.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Moving on to more eye candy. Well, we've got a couple of quality of life things we were doing this milestone. And one of them is something we'd want to do for a while, which was add a quantity button to crafting. So a cornerstone of crafting had always been that we were going to get factories online. And it's just, we're not there. It's probably not going to happen pre-launch, but we need to make it so that you guys can craft stuff, or at least the basic stuff, in mass if you have the resources, and not have to suffer through 4 clicks and 5 seconds, right? So
times 12 or 20 or 50 or whatever. That's the key, is being able to load these things up. So this is a big one for existing players. New players may not care as much because they won't have recognized how much of a quality of life improvement it is, but it really is. I mean, it has multiple effects, actually. Not only does it reduce the number of clicks and the time, which is really cool, it also reduces inventory space, because now these items, like, I've made metal bars, I can make a stack of metal bars and they take up 1 inventory slot as opposed to taking up 12 or whatever, which will also help with bank space, which is another big one as well. And then by removing experimentation as a phase, that also means that it helped early game people because they're more competitive right out of the gate. So I think it's cool. It saves the fun, kind of cool, interesting experimentation phase for things where I really care, like the blade of the sword that I'm actually making, not back at the I need to make 16 metal bars phase.
Right. So that makes it nice. What's funny is chat's already complaining because the quantity button that's on test doesn't have the hold functionality that lets it flip up.
I heard that too. Yeah, we need to be able to either hold that down or we need a max, one or the other. We'll fix that. So guys, again, we just got it in. Yes, you're totally right, but we'll fix it. We've got a couple of little odds and ends like that.
It'll go up on the next. We actually have the hold functionality on the next test build, Todd. So it's already been. It shows you how sometimes things in our process, because I saw the button probably 2.5 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, this is way too painful. I instantly made a ticket and got it in, but it took time to bounce from UI to engineering back to me to check it out before it goes to test, right? So sometimes things just have a little bit of turnaround, but yes, we clearly knew on that one, and you will have it in the next test build.
So before we move on, one thing I want to call out about this in particular is that this is a great example of a feature that would not have happened if not for our players specifically chiming in and saying, I mean, yes, of course, you guys said it was a pain point, and we heard that. But more than that, we started to get ideas of how to fix it, and eventually that coalesced into something that was actionable for us to do immediately. So I make the joke a lot of time that Crowfall is a crowd-designed game because we talk to our players so much and we take feedback from the players constantly. But this is a great example of a time when very, very clearly there was a direct path from player feedback to implementation to game is much improved. So I think that's really cool, and I think it's worth calling out.
So we can move on to the next feature, which is alliances.
All right, cool. Okay, so we talked a little bit about alliances last time, but the alliances are in now, which is really cool. So the effect this is going to have is this is almost like grouping for guilds. That's the best way I was able to explain it internally, right? Is because if you think about grouping as building a party as a basic idea, you have a group leader. They can invite people, they can kick people, the group can disband. They are made dynamically and destroyed dynamically. They're also specific to a campaign, meaning if I go to another world, I'm not still part of the group that I was in back on this server. So effectively, this is the same thing, only at the guild level. So we've got an invitation mechanism where I can basically look at the guilds and send an invite, and it'll ping anybody who's online right now in this campaign who has the right to accept that invitation. If they accept, it shows up on the widget, on the alliances widget. Now anyone who is in that alliance, who's in that guild, is going to be taken into account in terms of friendly fire and in terms of using my building and my facilities. So there are still some things that the alliance does not have access to. For example, in this version, we have finally persistent chest, which is really cool. So in a stronghold now, we have a bunch of additional storage area for people to go and store crafted items or resources or guild-specific materials that they want to, things that they basically want to hold on to. Yeah.
There is a question on alliances. They're asking how many people can be in it, and we might want to mention how many guilds can be in it.
Yeah, so right now it's set to 5 guilds can be in an alliance, but there's not any limit on the number of people in an alliance. And the reason that I didn't want to put a limit on it, at least initially, is because we don't have a limit on the guild size. So, if the whole point of alliances is to, basically to allow political intrigue, right? It's to allow people to band together and then at the last minute screw each other over. That's why the system was made to be dynamic and allow you to instantly create them and instantly destroy them. I didn't like the idea of putting in artificial limits at the alliance level if we weren't also going to put limits in at the guild level. So at some point we may change that. We may decide that we want to put in, I know for tournament campaigns, for example, we are going to put in guild limits. My guess is we'll also then set an equal number in the alliance. So if I've got 100 people in a single guild, then my alliance can only have up to 100 people as well. It certainly isn't a hard thing for us to add. It's just something that we didn't do initially. I didn't think it was necessary for the first iteration. So I wanted to get it out, see how it felt first. But back to the things it doesn't do, alliance members do not have access to your guild chest. So if I have a stronghold and I'm storing a bunch of weapons for my individuals that are in my guild, alliance members can't come and just raid that. Now, if I lose the city, whoever takes it from me can raid it. So that adds a new dynamic to city sieging, which is I can store stuff there, but I need to be careful. I need to actually think about, and if at the last minute things look like they're going to be dicey, then I need to think about either getting rid of that stuff or moving it. So that's another nice quality of life thing. And I guess I should also mention that those chests, both the personal chest and the faction chest, those are available in Eternal Kingdoms as well. They can be crafted and added into your houses, which is going to go a long way to fixing the bank space problem that people have been complaining about for some time.
We might want to also mention that alliances, you can be in a different alliance in a different world.
Yeah, the alliances are based on the
I did. I said that, just like groups.
They're just like groups. Okay, so our first question is, do you consume less food if you're not moving? Because people have questions. No, food consumption happens every 55 seconds on a tick. If you're a larger race, that happens quicker. And for those of you that don't know, next to the Tree of Life in the temple is a way to restore your food when you're back in town. It's kind of our long-term, you need to bounce back to town at some point mechanic. Also, it's a combat can't go on too long mechanic. There's all kinds of things that are encompassed in the food system, but it happens at that same 55 seconds for everybody except Centaurs and Minotaurs. Okay. Todd, do you have any future plans for resetting talent points?
Oh, respec, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so respec is on the list of things that I want to get. It's something we definitely need before launch. This segues a little bit, so I'll give you guys a bit of a preview of not this version. So we've got 6.100 is on test right now, right? Meaning when we get it polished and fixed, it's going to go out live. So we're talking a matter of days, not weeks, right, before that thing goes live. The next version, which is 6.200, has 2 big tent poles in it. One of those is a dedicated focus of as many engineers as we can put onto client performance, right? Especially specifically in large player engagements. That's one tentpole. The other one is something that you guys have been expecting and waiting on for a long time, which is a kind of rebalance of talent trees and disciplines. So the individual pieces that we have are not going to change significantly, right? We've got certain powers and we're going to keep most of the powers, but how you get them, who gets them, how the disciplines allow you to cross over and grab things from other classes, there is going to be a massive upheaval, a cataclysm in the meta that's coming in 6.200 that you guys, I think you may be underestimating how much impact that's going to have on gameplay. So I think that'll be very, very cool. When that comes online, though, it's going to make it even more apparent than ever before that respec is necessary, because I don't want people, even though we have the fastest leveling treadmill in the history of MMOs, the goal of our game is not to make you replay that, right? That really exists to help you try out and learn your build so that you can then go participate in the campaign worlds. So we're not a game for raids or grinding or anything like that. And respec is a part of that. So we'll talk more about it later. I have specific ideas of how we're going to do it. And how it ties into the overall system, but it is something that's on the list. I'll confirm that, and it is something that we need before launch.
Okay. Here's just a general question. Why don't I get the stat benefits as a ranger from my bow when it is equipped? There's a piece of art I put up with this one.
When it is equipped or when it's not equipped?
When it is equipped.
Okay.
So the reasoning here is we have classes that have multiple trays, and they use different pieces of equipment, and we didn't want them to double dip on their stats, as well as the skill trees also activate based on what weapons you have equipped. So if you have something equipped that you're not getting a benefit from, in the UI you can see it's yellow. So in this case, when you're in the melee tray, the bow is yellow and you're not getting stat benefits from it. When you are in the range tray, you have the same thing happening with your weapons, and you'll notice that your melee weapons are yellow as well. So there you go. Basically,
the other option there for us, which would have kept it balanced, is ranger weapons get half of the cool benefits of everybody else because they have both. Well, and that seems kind of lame. So I think it's better to let you have full benefit, but it's a toggle, right? To where one is on or the other is on.
Yeah, there's also stats that are exclusive to each, and we put those on the weapons as well. So there's
for sure.
So it's just someone had a question. They're like, what's going on here? I'm not getting the benefits, and that's why. It's
so
basically...
one of the that actually it does make me think of another thing that once again is a big addition in this build, but we didn't even mention, which is that we finally have mouse overs in now for hanging effects, right? So if I've got the Blessing of Gaia, there's finally a mouse over. Now, they're not localized and a lot of the data is not there, but at least we finally have the system in to be able to put that data in. So now we'll go back in. We have so many powers, it's still not a trivial amount of work. I mean, I think it's 1,300 powers or something like that. So I don't know how many hanging effects we have, but it's certainly in the hundreds. So we need to go fill all those in. But hey, we finally have a way to put that somewhere. Because before it was just like, I have the Blessing of Gaia. What does that do? Only Blair knows. You have to email him, I guess.
I'm looking at the data right now. We have 816 of those to fill out.
Okay.
So it's a sizable number. That's going to come in 6,200. For now, there's just going to be a little dot there. And there's a couple prototype ones that I checked out to see what it looks like, so I can hand it off to a designer to implement all of those, because that's a lot of effort. Your next question is, I have never had the option to experiment while making intermediate tools, but my friend can. Why can't I do that? So this one, I went digging into it, and I discovered that intermediate tools, the axe was the only one that had experimentation data set up on it. So your friend was probably making axes, and you were making the other three tools. So thank you for the question, because I tracked down a bug and fixed it really quickly. But it was kind of funny. I'm like, why would one character be able to do it and not another? It was just, he was making axes and you were probably making hammers.
Yeah. And if that's not it, post again. Let us know. We'll go find the next bug.
Can we only allow campaign gold earned to be used to purchase keeps?
So that's Maybe is the answer to that. So this really is tying into the import-export embargo rule set, right? It's what things can I bring into a campaign and what things can I not. So right now, the only thing that we do is we make sure that you can't take advantage of sacrifice items that are brought in from another world. And that was done specifically for a reason like this. It's giving too much of an advantage to import. So we don't have this capacity yet, but in theory, we could actually go through and put an import-export knob on the campaign that says, don't let them bring in gold, right? Or, we've even talked about don't let them bring anything other than equipable items, or don't let them bring in anything other than the items that they currently have equipped. So there's a number of ways we could potentially solve for that. But I do get the point. The point is just if it's too easy for me to bring in gold, then I get too much of a head start because I can run right in the game. I can immediately go grab a keep, and everybody else is out farming for the gold. This is one thing that's nice about the no import rules, right? The no import rule set starts everybody on a more common ground. So,
but we definitely saw some issues with the no import in the last campaign as well. Remember, because we had it created a whole lot of PvP right there for people trying to get that initial set of gear.
It was for sure. And I think that's a bit of a problem, too. So I don't want people to come even to the Terminator rule set, right, where you come in with no imports. I don't want them to come in an hour after the thing starts and all the War Tribe areas are completely camped with people that are fully geared and you're trying to punch trees. So we'll need to solve that as well. Granted, it's supposed to be about as hardcore as our game gets, but I at least want people to have enough purchase that they can get into the loop. If they don't, then they just quit, and that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the campaign.
Okay, and somebody said larger maps. You want to go into that, Todd? I know we have a question in there, but
sure. I mean, the nice thing there is we can do it easily, right? We actually historically have had worlds that were too big given the population. So yeah, yes, we can certainly step them up. I've been trying to be a little bit more conscious of only stepping them up as player population increases. But the nice thing about our procedural world generator is we have the ability to do that.
Todd, there's a question about guilds where someone's asking if I'm in Guild A and I align with Guild B and Guild B aligns with Guild C, am I then aligned with Guild C also?
Yeah, so it works the same way grouping does, right? So technically you have an alliance leader, and if they want to group with, if A and B are in the same alliance and C wants to join, they have to join that same alliance. B can't go join a different alliance unless they first quit out of that first one. So again, mentally model it after grouping because it effectively works the same way.
Here's another question. Can the keeps be owned by war tribes prior to them being taken over?
God, I really want that. Not just prior. I'd actually like to have them start to spread. Like if you don't keep a war tribe at bay, they start to take nearby outposts, and if they get too close, they'll actually attack you. That's something I really want to have. I don't know if we'll get it by launch or not, but it is something that I have in mind, especially for like the infected. It would be a great way to train people on how the dregs works, is let them fight against PvE factions to kind of get their feet wet.
I think it will just add to the world being cooler. We just haven't gotten to it yet, and it's definitely something we want to do. We know the early campaign problems, too, where people just try and get in a land rush. I think we actually solved the bug with neutral chests being lootable by anybody, even prior to the fort being taken. That will go in 6-100, so it will change the dynamics of that initial rush just a little bit, because you have to wait until the first cycle of fort activity before you can actually start taking stuff from those chests. So actually, you know what? You can comment in chat. Let's ask some questions here. What's the feedback on the first round of fort chests? Because it's been a feature that we've been talking about and the community has been asking about for a really long time. Like, because they kept equating it to the Shadowbane mines, right? And now you have a way to get stuff. There's some rare stuff in there. There's some sacrifice items in there to those fort chests that, but that was a feature that was largely driven by the community, I want to say.
Yeah, for sure it was. And I think one of the things that's funny about it is the forts were kind of designed to be larger engagements, right? We thought that we'd have roaming bands of thugs, be 5 or 10 people against 5 or 10 people, and then the forts would kind of kick that up to 15 on 15 or 15 on 20, and then the large keeps would be the fights where you have 175 or 200 or however many people showing up. We're actually seeing the zones top out on the fort fights. So some of those forts are really, like the dust and the gold forts are really, really valuable because they're causing many guilds to show up, all trying to converge on the fort at once, which is great. I mean, I can't complain with nightly PvP activities being more popular than we expected. So it does mean I might have to go in and take another look at some of the world building, maybe open those areas up a little bit. The choke points of the Fort Lodge, right? Those doors get a little bit too congested with that many people because they weren't really, I didn't expect we'd have that much of a turnout for them, but we certainly are. So it's pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah. And a lot of the chat feedback is that they're still overproducing. In 6-100, we have doubled the amount, and we have the loot that each of those produces.
So the amount of locations, not the, yeah. So the loot was cut in half, but the number of capturable locations is doubled.
Right. So we'll see how that shakes out. Again, we're tuning this as we go on. Now that it's just knobs and treasure tables, it's much easier. One of the things that people are talking about is the availability of some of the higher quality resources, and some of that stuff is in there on the probability is once every 2 or 3 days that some of that stuff drops. It's not like it's dropping purple loot every single time, or it shouldn't be. That would be a bug, right? It should be rare enough that you might see 1 in a 3-day cycle produce that, and it was probably enough to build maybe 1 and 1.5 sets of armor. So we kind of thought about that when we were building it, like, oh, it's cool if this thing produces maybe an epic set of armor every couple of days. And just because it can do that will assure that people will always have use with the loot that's in there, because it could do that, right? If it only ever produced just basic materials, then it would be boring, and then you'd hit a point and it's like, oh, you know what? It can never produce anything good. So I'm probably going to tuck some more goodies in there as time goes by, just at a ridiculous rate where it will be interesting to always check those things. All right, next question. Any plans to make the game more self-explanatory to new players without the need of spreadsheets? For example, tooltips while crafting.
So yeah, actually, so that is an interesting and a great point. Is we have 2 different systems we use to teach the game right now, right? Outside of just general UI, is we've got a series of quests that basically the goal of that is to kind of ping pong you through the every system and just bounce you off of it. So we're not going to teach you a hell of a lot about food and crafting. We'll just have you make a bowl of soup. You got it. If you care, you can dig into it. If not, you're on to the sacrifice, right? Like every step of the quest chain, which you'll notice the quest chain, like there's I think there's 1 quest that tells you kill X number of monsters. And that's it. Like there's no other quest. We have literally 1 quest in the game that tells you to go kill a number of monsters. So the goal was to kind of ping pong you through there. The other system is tutorial tips, which is the first time I mouse over a tree out of combat, a tip pops up that says you need to harvest this. So what we haven't done yet is tie those 2 systems together. They're supposed to be at the end of a dialogue sequence a lot of time. The characters only talk in character voice. So you don't generally see the ranger captain say, now hit K to open your power loadout. That we just didn't do that. So instead, they talk more in voice, and the idea is at the end of that dialogue sequence, a tutorial tip is supposed to trigger that says press K to open your power loadout. That bridge between those systems wasn't quite built yet, which is why there's still some pretty significant bumps in the road where it's like, well, you told me to do this, but you didn't tell me how to do it. And it's because that tip didn't fire. So yes, we do need to do quite a bit of that. I also want to go back in once we have the baseline mainline quest, all the chapters that takes you and bumps you through every system. I want to go back in and layer a quest for every class that tells you how the main feature or mechanic of that class works. And then I'd like to also layer in some lore quests for all the gods to basically explain the backstory of that god and the personality of that god. You can take those quests or not. It'll be up to you because, again, we're not really a questing game, but I think that would be nice to add a layer of more understanding and context to the universe because some people really get into that.
Will we ever see forts come off of timers? This promotes zerg fights as well as turns the game into a prime time only game. So there's a history to this.
Yeah, the answer is we started there, right? We started with forts not being on timers, and the universal response was that people didn't like logging in one day to find that all of their locations had been taken overnight. Because that's what happened pretty much constantly. Yeah. So that's why we moved them to a timer-based system. So we have outposts, which are available 24/7. Then we have forts, which are available on a nightly basis. Then we have keeps, which are available on a weekly basis or twice a week. What we haven't done yet is done any to the keeps. I actually would like to give a little bit more focus to the guilds to allow them to have more control over when those things fire. But we also talked about beefing up the outpost a little bit, like having the outpost to have a chest that gives you resources or something, or gives you war tribe loot or something. We might consider doing that. It certainly would be symmetrical, and as Blair will tell you, I like symmetry in design. I like to teach you something once and have it then build on that lesson all the way up. But to answer the question, no, we actually tried that first, and the general consensus was they didn't like it, so that's why we put the things in on timers.
Any plans on modernizing character creation to include stats of races, prime stats of classes, and the roles that the classes will fill?
Yes. Just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yep, that's coming in the near future. Will the NP be expanded to include more beneficial gear crafting aside from the ring? I kind of answered that earlier. Yes, we definitely are always going to be putting quests here and there where we need them in the NP if we find we need a little filler. And we like teaching the crafting stuff. We invested a lot into it. The system is really deep, and we kind of want to showcase some of the things we can, which is why that Immortals ring lets you experiment on multiple lines. And I created a whole kind of fake crafting profession to allow you to teach, and it doesn't affect the rest of the game. So we can do all kinds of fun things there.
Yeah, the goal of the questing was to, let's start with the superhighway, the most important stuff that they need to learn, that if they don't, they're just going to not have a good game experience because they're going to run out in battle and die or whatever. Later, we're going to go back in and add in a bunch of different off-roads and off-ramps.
Okay, currently the names, faction shield, health bars, and fly text above the player heads are too large and do not scale well against the character models at various distances. How will you improve this, especially for larger fights?
All right, so first of all, we slimmed it down. That's answer number one. In this version right now, it's been slimmed down by about 20%, I want to say. But we're also adding toggles. Do you want to explain how those work?
Yeah, so you will be able to either hotkey or you'll be able to go into your settings and you'll be able to turn off or select whom things appear for. So friendly only, enemy only, all or none if you want to turn off guild crests, friendly health bars, or hostile health bars. So we've given you 3 big buckets and 3 or 4 settings for each, so you can customize it to what your rig can handle and how much noise you want to. Oh, I think names is in there as well. Names is one of the options.
Yeah, and the reason we put them on hotkeys is also because there are times in battle where you'll want to toggle them on real quick just for targeting purposes. And once you've got your target locked in, target it off because you want that FPS increase.
Right. Everybody may not need to see everybody's crests, but the person who's kind of judging, should we stay in this fight or not, may need to know that. So probably your people who have already been designated as your group leads will want to know that information. They'll probably have to run with all that stuff on. Everyone else can toggle it off. And if you want to make cool videos and set a really sweet track to it, then you may just want to disable all that stuff so you have the best performance. Next question. Could discipline tooltips provide more details, numbers, so buying and equipping them isn't necessary to see what they actually do? Example, being able to select a major discipline, overview window locks, we could hover over power to see the details. This goes into the size of our item tooltips. And our item tooltips, if you've ever purchased any of the archery ones, you know they already take up almost the entirety of the screen, and because we're just giving you so much. In the future, that may change if we break things out, but the point of the little 2-line blurb text in there is just to give you a high level of what the ability does without going into the super details, because we don't have the room there. It's more of a space issue, and we don't want these things to take up the entirety of the screen. Now, you had mentioned something, Todd, about kind of like a guide.
Yeah, so that this is an example where the question jumps to a solution as opposed to saying here's the problem. The problem is I want more information about a discipline before I get it. That's the actual problem. In fact, I might want that information before I even find the discipline. The issue that I have with trying to fix it the way it was suggested, which is just make the pop-up bigger, is I have to actually go find that particular discipline to be able to mouse over it to see if I might want it. So what we're doing with this massive overhaul is we're actually building a Crowpedia. We're building basically a little database that you can go into. It's a very simple sorting mechanism where you can say, let me see the different disciplines. Let me mouse over the disciplines. I don't have to have them. I can actually just dig around in the system because it's going to end up with a very, very deep system for build, for character builds. One of the things I was proudest of that we did on Shadowbane was we created a system where the builds, it was combinatory, right? We had basically so many different options for players that there were millions of different build combinations. And so we're trying to get back to that. That's the design goal with this overhaul that we're doing. In order to do that, though, I don't want to force people to actually have to go find every single discipline in the game just to mouse over it to see if they want it. So we're going to put in, this is another part of the training, right? Teaching the game and exposing this stuff to people. We're going to be putting that in as well. And I don't know if that'll come in the next build or if it'll come in the following one. We'll see where it falls, but we are in the middle of designing it right now. Basically just letting you sort through different combinations of races, classes, and disciplines.
We'll be seeing some of the upcoming discipline and class balance changes in 6.1. Test doesn't appear to have anything yet.
Not in 6.1. That's 6.2. It was such a large undertaking that it didn't fit in a single milestone, actually. So work is being done in the 6.1 timeframe, but none of it is coming forward in 6.1.
Yeah, we're chomping at the bits to actually fork our release branch so we can actually, in earnest, just start ripping apart lots of wires. That's part of the 6.200 cycle. When will we see loot table upgrades? This was just kind of a generic, not specifying any types of loot tables, but loot is always in flux. Our loot master, General Brandon, is always working on loot. In this update, you're actually going to see the minor disciplines shift over to the thralls, right? So they will drop thralls as Duber loot in the world, and it's a thing that we're constantly adjusting, right? I mean, I can't say that we will ever have a milestone ship where we didn't touch a loot table, because that's something that you just touch all the time.
Yeah, in this one, for example, we moved the miners over to thralls as well, right? Yeah.
So that's the big thing, but we're always tweaking what the bosses drop, what the monsters drop. I mean, it's just that's an always in flux kind of thing. Final question is, are there any plans to allow a group leader to create a waypoint / marker for easier group navigation? And I love this one.
I do too. I don't know why it's mixed with group leader. Like in general, I think it'd be really cool to have a waypoint system. We do have a design for it and we have a plan for it, but it's not a must-have. It's nice to have. So it'll bubble its way up at some point.
Yeah. Okay, so that ends our question session. So we can zip through the rest of this and get to our announcement of the September and October rewards. But first, Debbie Sue is going to tell us about the Patron Backer Pack.
Thank you, Blair. All I wanted to mention is that right now we've had a rockin' deal of the Patron Pack for $39.99, and it has been a bestseller. I know a lot of people are bringing in friends and guild members, so I wanted them to know the sale will end on the 10th. So be aware of that. Tell your friends to come in this weekend and take advantage of us while they can. This week's war story was submitted by Undead, and it is excellent, very entertaining, and awesome work. It is an epic defense at the keep of the deliverances of the judge. Shout out to the Zergs. More numbers doesn't mean you will win. Also, save the elves. And if you don't get that, watch the video. A quick view of it right now. A quick clip.
That is a lot of players. That's watching any of these videos, I think it's, Todd and I were talking about this morning. As the optimization comes online, we are filling a great role as a game for big battles, which is awesome because not a lot of people do that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting is because you guys have a very different perspective, right? What you see is, well, that's not working. Look at the frame rate. Whereas what Blair and I see is, holy crap, look how well the server's performing. Hey, look, the message ping is actually mostly we see most of the things being there and the few holes as things we can fix. So for those of you who are suffering through it, thank you. I mean, there must be something fun there to be willing to suffer through. We will get that stuff fixed. It's going to end up in a really, really good place. And 6,200 is where we're going to take a really big bite out of it, for sure.
Those of you that are already backers have gotten our September reward, which is very cool. The Malachi statue and the belt totem, which gives you a bonus stat. In October, we're amping the value just a little bit more. This time you're getting the Blade of Fire, which has a very cool fire effect on it. And you're getting the chest sigil that you can wear, which also has a bonus stat. And this is based on Arkin, who was the son of the god of fire and had his fire and the sun stolen from him. So if you would like to know more, visit our website and for sure take a look at the Crow rewards.
And again, this is not a please come and buy it, like pay extra money kind of thing. We have people who are still playing our game and have played it every week since Kickstarter, where they bought a backer package. This is a thank you. This is a thank you for the people that helped get us to where we are right now. And if you jump in, then great. You're gonna get them just like you'll get everyone that comes between now and launch. If you want to jump in, if you don't, you want to wait, that's totally cool too. We're trying really hard not to be an organization that centers ourselves around selling. We'd rather center our organization around make a good game, and hopefully at the end of the day, it'll find an audience. And you guys being here is proof that at least fingers crossed, so far so good. So
we didn't get to take a lot of questions today from the stream, so I'll send some of these over and see if we can feed them back through the forums for a few of these. I took some notes.
Yeah, WSU has a thread over there for questions for the live stream. The last half of the questions I read today were from a previous posting in there. So again, yes, we like to answer some questions on the fly, but a lot of times there's a lot of good stuff that just flows by and we don't have a chance to see it. Organizing it on the forums is great for Todd and me to actually have reasonable answers as well for some of these things. So there you go.
And next time, we're going to talk about class and discipline changes, of which, like I said, it's going to be a significant change to the meta. So we'll talk about that some next time. Twitters,
Facebooks, ring the bell.
Yes. Check us out all the places, please. We love it.
Do all the things that you have to do. Is there one I'm missing, Debbie Sue?
No, I think you got it. There is a thing called Instagram. We're there too.
Okay.
And YouTube.
Twitters, all the things. Watch on Twitch. You'll start seeing, actually, if you go over to test, I put all of the mounts that are coming in 6,100 over there on a vendor. You can just grab one off the vendor and see if you like it. I'm sure someone will put up pictures of them all, including some of the Twitch ones and things like that will come out through other venues other than previous purchases and current purchases. And I think what's interesting is we have 4 variants or 5 variants of every mount because we've been doing this since Kickstarter 2015, 2016, 2017. There's variants for all of those mounts. So you can go over there on test server and just pull it off the vendor and check it out and decide if you actually want any of those, because I'm pretty sure they will be available for some of our backers on the shop. We still have some of those that are up there, and I think if you bought them,
unless they were marked exclusive. If they were exclusive, then they weren't. But yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I think the Kickstarter backers had the option to buy all of the ones that came out afterwards, if I'm not mistaken.
I have no idea.
I'm sure it is. So.
I have no idea. So
they're all over there.
Well, as always, I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening to us and sending your questions and giving us your design feedback. You guys are the best. I say it all the time, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and that's very, very true. So thank you for following us. Thanks for keeping up. Thanks for having faith in our project and our vision and our team. And I think that's probably it for this month.
Yeah, we'll see you next month.
All right.
Enjoy September.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you in game.